Hi, this is Kara from the Special Needs Mom podcast.
And this is Angela from Especially Organized, Sensible Solutions for Special Needs Moms.
We have this heart for special needs moms. And so we thought, you know what, let's combine forces. And we have come up with what we're calling the Purge Party. And you can pretty much guess what it is. It's a party where we're going to come together and we're going to purge, or in general, accomplish a goal, a small goal together. So we have set this for January 27th, starting at 8 o'clock for my Pacific Coast people.
Which means 11 o'clock for all of you on the East Coast. So this is an opportunity. If you have something on your to-do list that has just been stuck there and you are wanting to move it up on the list, you're wanting to tackle, maybe it's a space or an area of your home or a category in your home that has just needed a little time and attention. This is your opportunity for you to be online with us while you work and have access for us to help you answer your questions, help guide you, and just serve you for those 2 hours.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you can tell like what we've designed is just this very high level of support for that project that you just haven't been able to tackle on your own. The thing that we are envisioning is that you get to leave this purge party feeling so accomplished because you did the thing. You started the year off getting that thing done that you were stuck on last year. And so it's a momentum builder, if you will. You can go ahead and sign up. We have a link ready for you. And we are offering this for $40 for the whole experience.
Absolutely. And we hope you'll join us. I think it's going to be really fun. It's going to be a great group of moms of special needs kids. So we all get each other. We all have an understanding of what it's like to have something on our to-do list, but just we haven't been able to tackle it yet. So I hope that you will join us. We're super excited to bring this to you, and we are thrilled to work with you.
All right. We'll see you all there. Hi, I'm Kara Riska, life coach, wife, and the mother of 4 incredible and unique kids. It wasn't all that long ago that my son received a diagnosis that had my world come crashing down. I completely lacked the ability to see past the circumstances, which felt impossible, and the dreams I once had for my life and family felt destroyed. Fast forward past many years of surviving and not at all thriving, and you'll see a mom who trusts that she can handle anything that comes her way and has access to the power and grace that once felt so completely lacking. I started the Special Needs Mom podcast to create connection and community with moms who find themselves up against what feels impossible. My intention is to spark the flare of possibility in your own life and rekindle the dreams that you hold impossible now. This isn't a podcast about your special needs child. This is a podcast about you. If you're a mom who feels anxious, alone, or stuck, then you are in the right place. Welcome. Hello, and welcome back to the Special Needs Mom podcast. Today, we have part 2 of the interview episode with Robyn Rosenberger, who is the founder and CEO of TinySuperheroes. So you got a little bit of introduction to who she was and just how she thinks from last week. This week, I'm actually going to tell you, we're going to talk about what her organization does. And of course, I could read the website and see what she does, and it was pretty clear. But when I got to hear like the heart behind it and really more clearly understand the impact of the simplistic thing of what she's doing, I really enjoyed feeling the connection to another human on a mission to change lives. And so I think you're going to really enjoy it as well. This episode is a little longer than last week. You're going to get to be part of the conversation where Robyn and I were just going back and forth, kind of geeking out on the power of our thoughts. She shares some really great explanations of how this has played out in her own life. And she uses examples from what she has overcome to that I think applies so significantly to us special needs moms as we're navigating this journey. And so you're going to love this, the second part of the interview. At the end, make sure you hang on because she's going to tell you how to get involved. She's going to tell you some programs that she has available. I want to make sure that you don't miss out on being part of a community. That's something that is my hope and wish for every single person that listens to this podcast, is that they create a place that is their thriving community, a place where they can go, where they find people that are maybe ahead of them, maybe even behind them a little bit on the journey of becoming a special needs mom that is thriving. Now, you're like, wait, I don't know any special needs moms that are thriving. Exactly. That's why we as special needs moms have to inoculate ourselves with the possibility that that is a potential for us. And the best way to do that is to surround ourselves with other mothers that have similar but different challenges that we do as a special needs mom, yet are in the conversation of thriving and finding joy, experiencing presence, which Robyn will talk about in this episode, and what it looks like at a tangible. She gets really tangible on like looking at what that actually looks like in her everyday life instead of just having it be a lofty idea. So I think you're really gonna find a lot of value from that. So I'm excited about it. I was editing the episode and I found myself continuing to listen to the episode even after I was done editing it. Like I just listened to it and I wanted to listen to it again. And so I think that you're probably going to want to listen to this one more than one time because it's so packed with a powerful conversation. And it takes a while sometimes to have these conversations totally digest. So listen to it a couple times. Reach out, please, if you have any questions. I'm always here and available to you. My contact information is the easiest through DMs on Instagram. All of it's available in the show notes. I cannot wait to meet you, to have a real conversation with you. It is the highlight of my day when I get to talk to one of you in real life. One last thing before we start. We are coming up on the anniversary of this podcast, and I'm really excited about it. I have a very special episode in store. It is sharing the stories that were created and generated through the Own Your Story workshop. And I listened to them yesterday and they were so powerful, so moving. And I think it's just the best way to celebrate the connection that was created in this podcast as I share these stories with you. So that's coming as well. Also coming, I'm going to be doing a back to school series that I'm dreaming up still. So if you have any requests or things that you really want to hear about, please don't be shy. I'd love to hear. And I'm going to be over here dreaming up all different ways to hang out with you on the podcast and to provide valuable conversations that hopefully is part of your community of thriving moms. All right, let's get into the episode. So you get to be in rooms, virtual, I'm sure, mostly, with so many parents of what we'll call tiny superheroes. And actually, tell us a little bit in your own words about your organization and what it means to you.
Yeah, so as Tiny Superheroes, it started on accident. And I would say my first motivator was like, there's this little girl who I'm seeing online and she looks different than everyone else. And I want her to know that a stranger thinks she's beautiful. Like that was it. It's like, and I happened to be making superhero capes. So I was like, I'm going to do it through a superhero cape. I'm going to send her a superhero cape. That was like, that is the beginning. And my mom worked in special education my whole life. So the seeds were all there, but I really had no idea that was my realm. You know, I had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
But so like kid after kid, you know, it's just like, wow, like when I think of special needs, it's like, I can name you like 5, right? Of like the kids that like I grew up with, or like you see in school, or like they make movies about, or you know what I mean? But
Yes.
like the first 2 dozen kids who were tiny superheroes had none of those things, and
Uh-huh.
all had things that I was like, first of all, I can't pronounce it. Second of all, like, who in the world knew that like
Yes.
there were so many different ways things could go? Like,
Yes.
I was like, I had one son at the time, like he was 1 year old. And at that point in my life, like your 20-week ultrasound was like, are you having a girl or a boy? Right.
Yes.
And for most people around me, that's what the 20-week ultrasound means, which is not surprising then when something else is revealed, that it's shocking because it's not even part of our narrative that that's possible. So I would say kind of the next like milestone for me in Tiny Superheroes that happened early on that kind of started forming the foundation was in the beginning, it was literally like one cape here, one cape there. And I got an email from a father, and this was before I didn't know the community. Like
Mhm.
I wasn't part of it. I didn't know. And you don't know what you don't know. And so I definitely had never thought through really someone losing their child. Like I just had never gone there in my mind. And so I got an email from a father, which was pretty rare to begin with. And he wanted to let me know that his son loved his cape and passed away, and that they buried him in his cape.
Oh
And
my
he
gosh. Wow.
included photos of his son in the casket with his cape on. And it was like literally like took your breath away in a way of like, I had no idea, like of so many things. But what I hold on to in that moment, which was really early on, is like, okay, if a cape or tiny superheroes or me, if we can provide like one piece of hope for that worst day of your entire life where you think you might not be able to go on, then how could I ever do anything else? Like,
Mhm.
to me, the barrier is always like money. Like, that's always
Yeah.
like my stressor. And that's like, well, that's why you wouldn't do it and blah, blah. And I was like, this is so much bigger than money that I would be embarrassed for that to be the reason I don't do it, you know? And so it's been like 8 years. We send capes to kids all over the world. So they're in like 26 different countries. There's like over 80,000 tiny superheroes. It's kids with any diagnosis. Like there's no guidelines to who's a tiny superhero, which is really amazing because we do have the opportunity to bring together families that are going through something very different, but have an underlying commonality of not fitting in and feeling alone. And so the commonalities between a family with kids with autism and a family with kids with heart defects, they're actually like not far apart. And there aren't a lot of opportunities for them to meet. And so it's actually like you're really not alone. There's like a lot of people who do get it and do see you and also feel alone. And so that's kind of the goal. So in some ways, like I want tiny superheroes to be their extracurricular activity, like they
Uh-huh.
earn patches for their capes. It's like, you don't play soccer? That's totally fine. Here's your mission, these are your friends. Like, here's your team. In other ways, it's like, I want you to have a way to mark your journey. Like you had surgery. Let's like mark that with a patch because that's a big deal. And in other ways, it's like totally about the mom, you know,
Yeah.
and or giving them a way to tell their story in a way that someone could understand. Like people do understand the idea of a superhero. And if you can talk about really hard things in a positive way, people are more receptive to like hearing it and being able to have the chance to understand. So it's totally a journey. Like my whole goal with Tiny Superheroes is that when you enter it, you are on a journey. But like my journey has been in some ways very steady and in most ways like totally unpredictable. But for me, I always say like it starts with a cape, but that's really the cape is you're welcome to our community, and everyone uses the cape differently, but I'm hoping to provide much more than that.
Wow. I love hearing you talk.
Oh, they-
And yeah, and it is interesting because I am a person that doesn't necessarily value a lot of things. I mean, I do value things. That's not true. I don't value some things. And most often it's like stuff that comes home like with my kids. There's just a lot of little things. And so there was part of me that I'm like, patches, like I don't totally get it in the sense of like, why is this so meaningful? But I think hearing you describe that it's the being part of a team because you're not playing soccer. And I'm just thinking about my special needs son not getting to play, really sad because he's watching his brothers play. I'm seeing my oldest son just yesterday, actually today, this morning, left on a Boy Scout trip where he's earning his patches, and they're very meaningful. And I don't think I was able to make the jump to the significance of being able to earn a patch for something that is extraordinary. Like I'm thinking heart surgery is probably more significant than getting the mountain biking patch. I'm just saying.
I would agree. I would agree.
So I think it was really helpful to kind of hear the heart behind it, to see the significance of these kids having the opportunity to earn this. And then the parents to champion behind them, be like, we're filling this sash up, buddy, or cape. And we're gonna fill the cape up and then we're gonna fill the sash up if we have an overflow.
And it's like, not that everyone's trying to hide things, right? But like the world encourages us to hide the uncomfortable things. And this is like a really non-threatening way to like share that you're on a journey, and it's inviting for questions, and you're proud. Like you should be proud that you went through heart surgery. Like that scar is something you earned,
Yeah.
and it isn't something we have to hide, but we do live in a world that doesn't understand. And when I think of like the kids wearing their capes around the hospital, it's like they're so proud of things that maybe we wouldn't otherwise encourage them to be proud of.
I think I think it's like it's a tool for starting conversations about like you said, the journey that child's on. And also I love what you said. It's an invitation to ask questions. I think you're right. Like most people, when I remember, early after we got out of the hospital after my son's craniotomy, people were like, "Oh, how's he doing?" And I would start to kind of like say, because this was not a short conversation. And so I was like, oh, thanks for asking. And I'm starting to talk. And then I realized they're like not that interested. Like they just don't have a place in their brain for it. And it took me a while to come to peace with that. For a while, I was very probably hurt by it, or I was making it mean a lot of different things. So I think that having the cape, I could see it being a little bit friendlier territory than other things that might come up in conversation. So I can see how that would be really useful, even for other kids to be like, "What's that?" Because one of the things I say, so we did a lot of rehab after my son's surgery, and so we would go to places that other kids are doing rehab, and when you go to these places, you see, like you said, I Like You was probably like, oh, there's like 5 disabilities. It's horrible to laugh about that, but if you're not in the community, that's kind of the world that you're in.
Yeah.
And so there was these 5. And so I went to the OTPT facility that we were in, and I realized, oh, there's a lot more than 5. And you get to be among the kids who have all the different long names, just like we had now. And you realize there's a whole other world out there. And so it's like, now you're part of the world, I'm part of the world, but that even being able to then be in this world and navigate conversations amongst us in a way that's honoring and respectful and provides dignity is a thing. So I'm curious. So something I noticed about myself, as I am a mom and with a special needs child, so there's all sorts of different groups to be among and be in. One of the groups in particular that's more very specific for one of his diagnoses, I have to really watch my time in there, because my brain starts to see all these things and it starts to become, I guess, in simple words, just too much for me to handle on top of what I'm doing in the front lines. And so I definitely use it as a resource, but I don't chill out there. And so I'm wondering how you, as somebody that's in a community that is filled, right, filled with people that have either unique, devastating stories, how you stay emotionally in without burning out, essentially.
Yeah, it's a really, really good question that people ask me a lot because so sometimes I think of it, okay, so sometimes I think like something's wrong with me, and sometimes I think it's like a gift. I've always dealt with anxiety and depression, like even before this work. So sometimes I'm like, is my medicine just making me like totally numb, but like I actually don't think I'm
Do I have
numb.
too much medicine happening?
Yeah, but like I actually don't think that's it, but sometimes I wonder. So somehow for me, so I have a lot, I people in my non-tiny superheroes life. So tiny superheroes is my life. So meaning I know them from something other than tiny superheroes. So many will be like, oh, I joined your group, but I just can't stay in that, And I'm like, totally get it. Like, first of all, doesn't offend me, doesn't hurt my feelings. I'm like, yeah, it's a lot, it's a lot. I will say that I don't spend all day in Facebook because it is a lot, but somehow the way my brain is wired, when something devastating is presented to me, I just love loving people. And probably I self-protect from like, I don't put my story into their story because I don't think I could raise my kids because I'd be too afraid of everything that could go wrong. Right.
Yeah.
And so I'm pretty good at not putting my kid in that kid's shoes, not in a bad way, but in a way of like, so it doesn't, I mean, as the mom, that will emotionally devastate you every single time biologically. So it's like,
yeah.
So I don't do that. And I just find joy in being someone who can handle it. And so I'm not a big crier. Like, I feel like I'm not inhuman and I cry, but like the normal crying triggers, like don't trigger me. And I really appreciate that, like in my role, because like if I'm coming to visit you at the hospital, like I think I'm able to have, I think I'm empathetic and able to like present to you that I really do care. But like, you can't take care of me, right?
Yes.
So if I come in and I'm crying, not that it's bad, right? But like the way that I think that it is beneficial to me is I never would want you to feel like you have to take care of me, because then I'm actually hurting you, Like if I'm there to like help, I'm just there to be, right? If I'm there to be, whether it's like through a text or through a visit or through what we create, like whatever, like it's just like not about me. And somehow I'm able to do that. I think of it sometimes like, I feel like surgeons must feel something like that, because how could you ever cut open a child? How could you ever, right? But people do it all the time. And a lot of them are very caring people who really love your child, and they have to do it. They have to approach it differently to succeed. And thank God they do, right?
Yes.
And does that make sense?
It makes total sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
And and I think it's almost like you compartmentalize, but it's not like you compartmentalize and shut your heart off, because your heart
No.
is part of what you're bringing and being present with let's just say you're visiting a family in the hospital.
I would say that's when I'm most present.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So you're present wholly, but it totally makes sense for me, because when I'm with someone as coach, and this is, it's called creating space, right? You create space to hold that person, all of who they are, aren't, want to be, don't want to be. And it's not about you and your opinion or your agenda. Like, you leave that in another room. Like, it's just not about that. And so it is a beautiful honor to be able to hold space for other people. And I think one of the questions that I was going to ask you, but I'm going to share it for myself, is like, what's your superpower? I want to hear it. But I would say, like, one of mine is being able to see somebody for the highest expression of who they are, even when they don't see it for themselves. And I think that's what makes me excellent at my job, is that as I'm hearing somebody and reflecting back, I am so in touch with their capacity to be and the essence of who they are, versus what usually comes up first is like the survival mechanism, the covering, the fear, right? Like, we all have that, every single one of us. And so I think that I'm a lot, like, that's what I think for me is so fulfilling, is to be with somebody in that space and to just hold that space, to create an opening for them to see it for themselves. So I'm going to pass the question on to you, and I would love to hear what you think your superpower is.
Yeah. It's something that I have seen. It's hard sometimes to see your own progress, but this is something where it's like, man, I am different than I was 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And that feels bold saying, but I think I'm fearless. And when I say that, I'm someone who has anxiety and has experienced panic attacks and hates confrontation. Like, I hate confrontation. There are daily things that totally scare me, right? Like, that I hate, that I would like to avoid at all costs. But I've had to go through enough of them that I now know, I cognitively know that the other side of them is better.
Mm-hmm.
And also that, like, the journey already exists, right? In whatever way you want to believe that, like, the journey already exists. Like, I don't really have control. So, like, I can pretend like I have control, but I don't really have control. So, like, the very clear path for me when I'm like afraid of something most of the time is like, you're going to have to go through it.
Mm-hmm.
So you're either going to like be like, man, I'm scared, but here I go, and like jump off the cliff, or you're going to like cry at the top of the cliff for a really long time. And that is like totally fine. But I don't do that anymore as much. I don't do that anymore. I'm scared to death. So it's not that I don't have fear, but maybe my superpower is that I have more courage, that I am willing to face it, even though I hate it. Like, I hate it. So it's not like it's not like it. I have a little adrenaline about them now, where it's like, I hate it, but I know it's going to be okay, even though I have no idea what that means. So, like, here we go. And every time I do that, I am better at it the next time. But there was most of my life where I would not do it at all.
I love so much about this. One of the things I think that really strikes me is that is the idea. Well, first off, I just hear practice. You have practiced the superpower, and you were bad at it early. Like 5 years ago, you were not as good as it. Very bad.
Very bad.
And I think what you've done is you've practiced feeling bad. And I think
uncomfortable.
Uncomfortable, precisely. So, we try not to say bad. You're right. But we call them unpleasant feelings.
Yeah.
And so most of us, if we are procrastinating, if we are feeling stuck, most of it is in some way avoiding an unpleasant feeling. And so you have practiced doing this over and over again. So now you, like you said, you cognitively know, okay, this is going to suck. This will not
Mhm.
be fun. I will feel sweaty and nervous, and it might be really, really bad. But you also know you have the confidence that you're going to be okay on the other side. And you know it's not going to be as bad as just sitting there avoiding it.
Yeah. And I have this thing that I say to myself a lot, like, this feeling I'm having is not the last feeling I'm ever going to have, you know? And when you're having like the worst feelings, you feel like this is definitely, I'm just going to die in the feeling.
Yes.
Like, it doesn't even make sense, but you're like, clearly I'm never going to not feel this way ever again. But every single time, I mean, 3 days ago, I felt that way. And here I am, 3 days ago, I couldn't see how I could possibly not feel that today. Like, I didn't see the light, didn't see the way out. But I don't know anyone who has never come out of it, right? Who has never like had another feeling. It might not be better, it might not be worse. It's just going to be a different feeling, I can assure you, you know? And
Yes.
so like letting that just be is so uncomfortable. But I think I really cognitively thought that like those feelings could kill you. And when I learned that like those feelings cannot kill you, they can exist and you will survive them and they will pass, gave me like the ability to endure them at all, let alone like now sometimes I have to endure them for a long time, you know?
Totally. And it's like the difference between we think that those feelings are going to harm us. And the
Mm-hmm.
difference is that they're, like I said, they're very unpleasant and maybe they even hurt, but they don't harm us. And then you think about, we put the superhero spin on that when you realize that you literally cannot be harmed by feeling badly, that you think about the worst thing that can happen to you, it will feel horrible, but it also doesn't harm you. And it almost like, I don't know, like even now I'm like, oh wow, it's almost like you have this like suit of armor on that you're
Yeah.
like unstoppable.
Yeah. Sometimes I'm not like really good at practicing mindfulness, but I like want to be. And I do like a little bit. But like the way that I think about it is it's like those feelings, they're in me, they exist, but like they actually are very separate from me. And so
Mm-hmm.
I can like see them and like, all right, I mean, they're here, but like they're not me. Like it isn't part of me. Like it's not like they are separate things. And when I can see them as a separate thing, it is way easier to like navigate having them, you know?
Yes. Yeah. And I think the added layer that I'm going to add in for the moms here is recognizing that all of our feelings, every single one, is generated by a thought in our brain.
Mm-hmm.
And the difference is we think that they're generated by a circumstance. So you think it's generated because your child's ill, but it's actually what you think about your child being ill that generates that feeling. And the reason this is important, because you're like, big deal, my child's still ill. Well, the reason this is so important is because that's where we either feel really powerless
Mm-hmm.
or we recognize we have the key to anything we ever want.
Literally. Can I
Yes.
tell you this really silly
Yes.
poem that is like life changing for me? Okay. It's but your mind is a garden, your thoughts are the seeds. You can plant flowers or you can plant weeds.
Oh, I love it.
Isn't that good?
Yes, it's really good.
And
Especially
it's
because my
so,
background's in horticulture. So like
oh, I love that. I love
it's
that.
right up
But
my
it's
alley.
like, it sounds corny and too easy, but it is literally true. Which, like, back to like your very first question about like, well, when we were talking about like choosing joy, like that's where that comes in for me. Is it's like, what are you telling yourself all day long? Like all day long, what are you we call them dragons. So it's like negative self-talker, it's like a dragon, and then you have to like
Mhm.
slay it with something positive. So like in hopes that like with practice, you'll start saying the positive things instead of the dragons. But like our thoughts are so powerful and we give them no credit,
Mhm.
right?
Yes, yes, exactly.
But
I
like,
think that's
yeah,
the
yeah.
biggest gift that I get to teach moms is the practice of really shifting from these unintentional, unempowering thoughts and beliefs about themselves, and the world, and shifting into recognizing them, becoming aware of them. And then once you become aware of them, you have so much more choice. It gives you so many more options. And it's even the slightest shifts. So, first off, even just becoming aware that something is a thought and that's why it's happening for you, that's powerful. But even something as simple, one of my clients in a group I run called Being Mom Together was talking about bathing her daughter, and it was just a nightmare like every night. And it was just, she would become so upset because it was just so difficult, and her daughter was not complying whatsoever. And she just shifted from I have to do this to I'm choosing to do this. It wasn't I get to do this. Like she wasn't like I'm privileged because I get to bathe my daughter. It was more like I'm choosing to bathe my daughter. I want my daughter to be clean. So just that little subtle shift went from making it really, really miserable to just maybe like, okay, this is hard. But it didn't feel like she was then the victim of her daughter being uncompliant. It was like, no, I'm in control. I'm choosing to do this. And so that's a good example of just a weed or a flower in the sense of like, it doesn't have to be a really pretty flower. And like, I
No,
think sometimes people take this too far and be like, I don't want to just think about rainbows and daisies and sunshine all
no,
the time. That's not the point. We don't
no.
want to have happy, positive thoughts 100% of the time. We want to feel sad when our children are hurting. We want to feel devastated. And so you're going to think thoughts that create that feeling. But I think, like you said, what are you thinking all day long? What are the
Yeah, it's
thoughts that are
funny.
just running through your head?
It's funny because when you just said that, I was like confusing myself for a second. And I was like, I think I figured something out. When I think of happy or joy, um, I think of them in a much deeper way than um okay, so like rainbows and unicorns, right? Like I totally get it. Totally get it. And I think there's value in them sometimes of like be positive. But I'm like I've never been like a cheerleader. Like I'm like
Mhm.
I've never been. So it's like I'm trying in my mind I was like connecting like but I when I think about myself choosing joy, it has nothing to do with this perfect picture. It's like maybe choosing being present is a better way of saying it. So that like my thoughts, they don't even have to be positive to be good. Like sometimes I think like, well, what is true? You know? Because probably what you're saying isn't true. The truth might not be good, but at least you're saying the truth, which is way more manageable than this other thing you've made up that's just untrue, you know?
Mhm.
And the truth is not always happy or rainbows, but it is good, you know? So it's like
Yeah.
even just thinking about like, is what I'm saying true? Could be a good place to start.
It's a really that I think actually is I can't think of a much more powerful question because I think what happens is we're experiencing something and we're experiencing it as truth,
Mm-hmm,
when as a fact,
mm-hmm,
unquestionable. And in actuality, it's our thought, right? So when we actually go and root back to what is the truth, and we get all the way back to something that is just unquestionably true, then we can start to see the relationship we have to the thing that is actually true. And that's when it's almost like I use the analogy oftentimes that like it's like a car stuck in mud. When it's stuck in mud, like it is stuck. And so it takes a little bit like to jostle it back and forth till you can like liquefy the mud to get that out. So asking a question like, is it true? Takes a little bit of jostling sometimes because oftentimes you're just so like, you're like, no, of course it's true. In your experience, you're experiencing it as fact. And
Mhm.
so sometimes even it's helpful to talk to somebody else to
Yeah.
actually have them help you question what you think is true.
Yeah. I was, um, cut me off if you need to, but in our journaling last night, one of the moms was like, I'm so overwhelmed. I'm so stressed out, common feeling. And I just happened to be like, can you just like brain dump when you say that? What are you talking about? And it was like a list of 5 things, I can't even remember them, but it's like, and then I kind of was like, well, here's mine, it's like laundry, the kids starting school, blah, 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 you know what I mean? And I was like, but if I write all those things down, there's actually not one darn thing I can do about any of them right now. Like tonight at 8 p.m., there isn't a single thing I can do to address any of those things that are coming up. Like there's nothing more I can do to prepare. There's no one I can call. So like tonight, you don't have to be stressed about that because it doesn't even exist right now. Like it's fake, it's false for your body to think you should be doing something because there's nothing you can do. So it's like you get to say goodbye to that and you can approach it tomorrow. But for tonight, my friend who's on journaling and feeling overwhelmed, you did it.
Yes.
Like, and that, like, how cool is that?
Yeah. It's like when you see the energy that your brain's expending on something that it
Oh my
literally has
gosh.
no ability to do anything about, you realize that doesn't make sense.
Does that make
And
sense?
you're like, that is not making sense. And no wonder I am so tired. And so, yeah, so you can almost give yourself permission to let it go. And then, or even better, you decide powerfully when you will pick it back up again, when you can
Yeah.
actually do something about it. Let's say it's the laundry. You can go say, okay, I'll do the laundry at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
Done. That's a really good point. So I don't want to bring this conversation to a close. Before we wrap up, I do have one other question I want to ask you. We're talking a lot about thoughts, right? And so I wanted to know what you think when you see a parent watching their child receive a cape. What thoughts or beliefs do you think that cape helps the parents formulate?
Like the obvious one is like they see that they're strong and capable. But like, but that's kind of feels easy. So what I'm really thinking of, like the moment when you're like so proud of your kid. Like
Mhm.
maybe like usually it's like they were so kind to that stranger for no reason and I had nothing to do, like you saw a picture of what your kid is capable of on their own and it was like beautiful and good and you're just like so proud of them. I i think that's often maybe the feeling that the parent has when the child's receiving the cape of like you're seeing your kid maybe believe in themselves for the first time or
Mhm.
like you're seeing your kid think like, oh, maybe I can do this, or you're seeing your kid think I'm not alone, you know. And like I don't think there's, for me, seeing my kid have those really important feelings whatever they may be, that's what makes you want to cry,
Mhm.
because it's like it's not
Mhm.
how you're feeling, it's like you're witnessing your kid feeling something that is so good. What I keep thinking of is one time I was in the hospital visiting a family and I gave them a cape and the child was very, very, very sick, fairly unresponsive, and he smiled, like I saw it. And
Mhm.
the mom was like, couldn't even remember the last time that the kid smiled, you
Mhm.
know? And it
Mhm.
was like that he had joy was all that mattered to her, you
Mhm.
know? And she saw it. She like saw that he had joy. And it was so powerful for her. Had nothing to do with the cape.
Well, it's almost like this cape again is this tool that
Yep.
elicited a moment for this mom to see my son it smiled, right? And like
Mhm.
back to even what we talked about as we wrap up, that when you as a mom see your child smile,
Mm-hmm.
that might be the success. That might be success for that child, is that you get to have that moment with your child, that it's like taking the expectations off of what was supposed to be, opens up this whole new conversation. And then these capes are an amazing conduit to open up those doors. Now, I'm sure people are going to want to hear more about how to get their own cape. And I would love for you to share a little bit about the best way for people to connect with your organization.
Yeah, we have a lot going on, but there's two things that like I think really are valuable. So one, like any child is eligible for their official Tiny Superheroes cape. And at our website, tinysuperheroes.com, you'll see a big blue nominate button. And it's as simple forms can be to get you started on your cape journey. So that is like a really easy place to just connect with us and start. But we also have our ambassador program, which is for moms and women caregivers. And it has been transformative for me and for the women involved in it. And so if there is anyone listening who is wanting more of this is what we're uncovering through our ambassador program as well. So it's been really neat to kind of be able to do it alongside the kids' Tiny Superhero journey. But a really great place to start if you have a child with unique needs of any kind is just to nominate them on our site, and we'll meet you there.
Sounds very easy. And I've been on the site and it is very straightforward. So, and we will have links to everything available through the organization on the notes to this podcast. So it'll be easy to access. Robyn, I just thank you so much for the jumping right into conversation with me. We couldn't even wait to like figure things out before we started recording, but and I feel like we could have gone on at least another hour without
thank
taking
you
a
so
break.
Much. I wish I could talk to you for another hour. It would be awesome.
Yes, I know, right? Well, maybe we'll do
uncovering. Yeah,
I know, right? We only got to like step one. We have like 3 steps to go. So, all right. Well, thank you so much for your time and energy and giving your heart to the organization and to the work that you do, and being an ambassador for this community.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
One more thing before we officially wrap up this show. Sometimes when I'm listening to podcasts, I have the experience of wanting more. I'm listening at the very end thinking, I sure wish that episode didn't end. I invite you, if you feel in any way the same way, I invite you to the Special Needs Mom podcast community, which is a free group that I host on Facebook, where we as a community of fellow moms who listen to this podcast and are experiencing life in similar shoes, get to talk to one another, get to share stories, get to actually interact. I hope you'll consider joining. See you over there.